We are live. Finally, man. Good to get you on, brother. This is the I Hate Football podcast. I'm your boy Q, joined by my boy Will from the 305 Sports Now podcast. What's going on, brother?
Nothing much, man. I am very, very, very happy, man. That was a beautiful intro, man. I loved it.
See, my boy, I didn't want to tell you, man. I wanted to just spring it on you, man. My boy,
Thanks, man. I loved it, dude. I loved it. I love the thumbnail too that you had for the live today, man. It's pretty neat, man.
Our boy Bobby hooked me up with that one. Probably like a week or so ago now. So
okay.
Shout out to my boy Bobby Finstock, man, and definitely like the way it came out, man. I let him know, hey, brother, see if you can, because I've been looking for something, man. I'm not great on that end of things, man. I'm still learning, or really not learning, man. I really need to put in the time to get better on that side of things. But man, I hit him up, and man, he did me a solid. He hooked me up with it, man. I love the way it came out. So shout out to my boy Bobby Finstock from Finstock Sports Network, man. Always a good dude. Always willing to help out, man. So shout out to him.
Yeah, he never takes a break, man. I don't think from having a full-time job, being a full-time dad, and running a full-time digital network, he's not career.
Stop, man. He's on 78 different shows, and
yeah, man.
One of them being a rainy day pod over there with our boy Adrian. What's up, buddy?
Yeah, man.
Good to see you on the chat.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. So he like I said, he's not take a break, dude, at all, dude. At all, man. So big shout out to Bobby. Absolutely big shout out to Bobby.
Oh yeah.
Hey, what's up, Adrian?
So, there he is, brother. There he is, our boy from the Rainy Day Pod.
Mm-hmm.
So, man, wanted to bring you on tonight, and wanted to bring you on to talk about this Miami Hurricanes offense, man. That is looking really promising, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think promising would be a really accurate word for it. I think there's been a lot of discussion about the potential of this team, specifically on offense. And really the biggest thing is the loss of Cam Ward, right? And I think anytime you lose a guy, not only just the first, player picked in the draft, which is obviously huge at any position, but especially at quarterback, and, by all accounts, probably, the best quarterback to ever play at Miami, right? And when you look at the void that leaves for a team, it can be understated, right? It's huge. Like there's no way around it. But I don't think you could have done much better than what you landed with Carson Beck, right? I think a guy who, I think most people were surprised when we landed at Miami, because I think, I don't know that anybody really had him pegged for Miami until kind of really later on in the process. And a guy that, by all accounts, everybody is extremely, extremely happy with to this point in camp. A guy who's looking like he's recovered from the elbow surgery, and a guy who's taken to the offense really, really well. And again, I think by all accounts, you may not necessarily have landed Cam Ward, right? But I don't think you're too far off a guy like Cam Ward when you're talking about Carson Beck.
Yeah, well, like you always say, you have talent. You have your thing is TED. I call it TED: talent, experience, and depth. Carson Beck definitely has talent, definitely has experience, and so I think that having him as to fulfill basically what Cam Ward left, it's gonna be really good. Underrated because of the season he had last year. People forget that when he came into the season last season, he was considered a Heisman frontrunner preseason before the season even started. Georgia underachieved offensively under Mike Bobo this past season. He had about 350 yards worth of drops as well, 35 drops overall, if I'm not mistaken, from his receivers. And that does take a toll on a quarterback, and also puts the quarterback in a position where they may do too much, and then they have to throw and end up throwing interceptions in the process, because now what could have been a third and short now becomes a third and long, and you're trying to do too much. So I do think Miami ended up with a very solid quarterback. They end up with a guy that's proven. They end up with a guy that's only lost 3 games in the SEC conference, played in Georgia behind Stetson Bennett. And I also think that he's going to shine in Shannon Dawson's offense, because Shannon Dawson's offense is very quarterback friendly. Quarterbacks have a lot of autonomy as well. And the one thing that many people have said on this sphere of podcasting that are very much, they do Keen's football full time, is that Carson Beck is very highly intelligent. He could read defenses as well. He knows how to audible on a dime as well. The RPO system that Shannon Dawson likes to run was going to suit his talent as well. Sneaky athletic, I like to say, based upon he's able to move. So Miami's in a good position with Carson Beck, and I think I think a lot of people will be shocked how good Miami's offense is going to be this year. Is he going to be Cam Ward? No. I mean, Cam Ward is a once-in-a-lifetime football player, a once-in-a-lifetime athlete, okay? We've had a lot of guys come through this program, Heisman Trophy winners, and we both agree on this platform that Cam Ward had a better season than all of them, okay? But than all of them. So I do think that with Carson Beck, Miami is in good shape, in a good position. What I'm hearing from camp, it's been awesome. Unlike Cam Ward is more of a rah-rah guy. In general, Carson might be a bit more low-key. The players seem to jive with him very well. They seem to like him from his offensive line to his receivers to his running back, and it seems to work very well with Shannon Dawson, his OC.
No, yeah, 100%, man. I think all those, man, just great points when you're talking about, first and foremost, you're looking at, what you had in Cam Ward. Obviously, again, everybody knows that it's been obviously well documented. The guy was the first pick in the draft for a reason. But I think the Carson Beck hate has been really interesting to me.
Yeah.
And, and maybe for anybody watching that doesn't know, I live in Georgia, right? And I live in the Metro Atlanta area, not far from Athens. I know a ton of college football fans, the majority of them being Georgia fans. And it's been really interesting to me to gauge Georgia's fan base and their thoughts on Carson Beck, and this thought that they're way better off without Carson Beck.
Mm-hmm.
Really interesting take, in my opinion, right? And I think that somebody's saying the audio was too low.
I hear you fine.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I hear you perfectly fine.
Adams 210. Man, I'm hearing myself fine. I'm hearing you fine. So, Adams 210, bro. I'm not hearing what you're hearing. Neither is Will, man. So I'm not sure if it's on your end, but definitely appreciate the heads up. So it's been really interesting to me to hear the criticism, right, and this hate that Carson Beck has taken from this fan base, man. It's been interesting, right, and it's been surprising, right, because when you look at a guy in Gunnar Stockton taking over, I don't think you upgrade. Right. And then now you fast forward to what it is you're seeing with the Miami fan base and the coaches and everybody who was out there to see them, practice, and specifically, the obviously all eyes on Carson Beck being the starting quarterback, and you're hearing nothing but great things. Right. And that can be attributed to a lot of different things. Right. I think a lot of times, change of scenery goes a long way. Change in, the voice in your mic goes a long way. Right. But I think, you're looking at a coaching staff in Georgia that we don't traditionally look at as a flawed coaching staff, right? Led by Kirby Smart and obviously having won 2 titles and everything. But you're looking at what it is they had around Carson Beck, and it's really interesting how deficient they were on offense last year, right? When you look at the way they recruit, right? A team that recruits, they've had the number 1 class in Kirby Smart's tenure multiple times. They're in the top 5 every single year. And then you look at what it is they surrounded them with, and you're like, where's all the talent you guys recruit, right? You look at the offensive line. You had 3 guys drafted in the top 3 rounds of the NFL draft, and you couldn't run the ball, right? You're handing it off to 4- and 5-star running backs. Couldn't run the ball, right? And so, granted, they had some injuries and the whole deal, and I get that. But you've come to expect a certain product coming from Athens, and they just didn't show that last year. And listen, and I know that they won the SEC, but they won the SEC, with just an elite defense and an offense that really was subpar, right? And again, even having all that talent, even having guys drafted on the O-line, the whole deal. So, I think to me, I can only look at that and say, listen, that's a coaching thing, right? And I think if you ask the Georgia fan base, they would love to get rid of Mike Bobo. And I was really shocked when they brought him back, because a team and a program like Georgia, given where they're at, you lose a guy like Todd Monken. I don't know that you replace him with a guy like Bobo, right? With you recruit nationally. And I think to me, that also means having that same type of reach on the coaching level, right? I feel like if you want a guy from across the country, I feel like all you got to do is be like, hey, I want you. And that person goes, I'm on the way, right? Kind of the same way they do it in recruiting, right? I always say there's 3 or 4 teams. Everybody else recruits. There's about 3 or 4 teams that pick and choose. Georgia picks and chooses who they want. They don't recruit. If they want you, they get you, right? And so to me, I just kind of naturally, I feel like, why didn't they go get a bigger name guy, right? Why didn't they go get, a young up-and-comer or a guy maybe that's established who's a legit OC? A little bit surprising to me, but again, I think they're lacking in the OC position at Georgia. I think they're lacking at the O-line coach position at Georgia with Stacy Searles, who the Miami fan base knows well because he used to coach at Miami, right? So I think I say all that to say, now at Miami, I don't think he's going to have the same issue, right? I think you start at the OC position. And a guy like Shannon Dawson, who I think has to start being talked about amongst the better OCs in the country, right? And I think that and then obviously we'll get to the O-line, but obviously the O-line isn't a big worry at Miami. But, again, I think he's in really good hands with Shannon Dawson.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say this: I would fire Bobo and you put James Coley as your OC. Although James Coley runs a more traditional offense, they've had success where he's gone. Okay, I mean Miami under Al Golden, when he was the OC, the offense wasn't bad. It was the defense that was the problem. So, and not only that, James Coley is also a fantastic recruiter as well. So you don't lose anything on the recruiting front if you're to make him OC. If you want to go that route, where you go internally, listen, man. You live in Atlanta. I've been to Georgia 2 or 3 times. I love the state. It's a very easy state, in my opinion, to live in. It's got 4 seasons as well. Has very mountainous, very beautiful state. In some places, it's not that expensive to live there either. I agree with you. I think they could just find an OC anywhere, and the OC would go over there on the drop of a dime. That's just my take. You have something to say, Will?
Speaking, one of my best friends here in Georgia, my buddy Keith.
I see him.
We work together, and he says Carson Beck sucks. Drama follows him everywhere. Listen, man, I would definitely argue that point. I would argue that the girlfriend or the ex-girlfriend now had a lot to do with that. If I'm being honest. Listen, I think everybody's got their own take and what they've heard in terms of coming out of Georgia. And he says you can have them. Listen, so tell me real quick, you'd rather have Gunnar Stockton than Carson Beck, and I'm sure I know what the answer is about to be, but
he's got a great name, but I'm sorry, Carson.
Yeah, listen, there was a reason.
He's got a quarterback named Gunnar Stockton.
There was a reason why he sat behind Carson Beck at Georgia, right? He's going to have better stats in the ACC. Yeah, I mean, I think there's several reasons why he'll have. AD said, "Yeah, we'll take him." Hey, listen, man, I'm right there with you. Yeah, I think he'll have better stats in the ACC. Really not the least of he's going to have better receivers that are actually going to hold on to the ball. I think when you look at how many drop passes Georgia receivers accounted for, like we talked about, I think it was in the neighborhood of 35 to 36 drop passes, and I've heard the total being anywhere from 350 yards all the way to about 500 yards or over. So I think when you look at the stats themselves, I think they're going to be better because, and we'll get to the wide receiver position, but I think he's going to be surrounded by better talent in front of him. I think he's going to be surrounded by better talent on the outside. So I think just based on that, I think he is going to have, better numbers than he did at Georgia last year.
Yeah. He only lost 3 games at Georgia. All right. I mean, Tyler Van Dyke lost 5 games in 1 year. So, I mean, if you want to talk about bad quarterback play, we've experienced that the last couple of years at the U. So, I mean, Carson Beck, listen, like I said, they're raving about him. Before last season, he was a preseason Heisman Trophy nominee as well, projected first-round pick until the season he had this past season, and of course his injury. We're excited about him here in Miami. Keith, I'll be very honest with you. Ever since Hannah Cavender's been no longer in the picture, no one's been talking about his personal life at all. It's all been football. It's all been media interviews. Yeah. Carson Beck has been a model Miami resident. We have not heard about anything about him in the clubs, not heard anything about him in the girls, nothing. He's not at all seeing attention. All he likes to do is hang out with his players, play video games, and go to barbecues at Coach Cristobal's house. That's pretty much where we've seen Carson Beck. as far as that goes. So, like I said, Hannah's out of the picture. Hannah is a TikTok sensation. That's it. I'm sure he has a PR. There's no winning with Keith, is there?
Listen, man, he's a Georgia fan through and through. Said you just had Cam Ward, Beck won't have his stats, but listen, man, this is the thing about that stat or that comment right there. One, I don't disagree with you, and two, he doesn't have to be Cam Ward.
No, he doesn't.
Stats. I think when you look at the way that team is set up this year, the way it's built, I think it's a different team. Like most teams are year to year. I think he's going to show in this offense, and Shannon Dawson is going to show his prowess this year. And I think this is going to be a year that I think Shannon Dawson really starts to garner that respect and starts to be looked at as one of the top OCs in the country. Because again, he doesn't have to have Cam Ward stats. He doesn't have to have Cam Ward's numbers. He doesn't have to throw like Cam Ward, lead like Cam Ward. He just has to be him. And we've seen what Beck looks like when he's right. You saw what he did. You saw what he did in 23 when he had the year that he did, and that led to him being projected as possibly the first pick in the draft. This past year. So listen, man, I'm not at all gonna sit here and compare the two. I think they're very different quarterbacks. But I think when it's all said and done, when we're looking at this room as a total, right, and I think we're projecting out at what this room is going to look like at the end of the year. First of all, we got to remember that, again, beginning of last year, there were doubts with Cam Ward. Again, I don't think this was an automatic with Cam Ward last year. When you look at what he accomplished at Washington State, there were doubts, right? That can he play outside of the Pac-12? Can he hold on to the ball? This is a guy who fumbled something like 12 or 14 times his last year at Washington State, right? But look at what he did, coming to Miami under Shannon Dawson, right? Threw for, I think, almost 600 more yards after completing, I think, 20 less passes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Turned it over less, threw for like 15 more touchdowns, right? So I think both, player and OC deserve credit for the maturation, for the development that he had at Miami. I think, it's not just one or the other. I think it's both. And I think both guys have to be commended for the way they handled things last year. Yeah. But again, he developed and got better at Miami. He wasn't a finished product when he got to Miami. This was a guy who was being looked at possibly as a day 3 pick if he would have entered the draft, right? And he came to Miami, elevated his stock, and became the first pick in the draft. So, again, I think player and OC both have to be commended for the progress that he made and ultimately being made the first pick in the draft by the Titans.
Yeah, and the one thing that we need to understand, and I'm going to quote my buddy Joe Gross, who won 60 championships over at Central. If you have a good offensive line, you do whatever you want on offense, and that's another thing too. Cam Moore was running for his life much of his time over at Washington State. When he came to Miami and he had basically time to make Cuban coffee, that's when you really saw Cam Moore shine. And the same is going to be for Carson Beck. No matter what conference Miami's in, Miami has a top 10 offensive line. The insiders here in Miami are saying it. Even the outsiders are saying it as well. They think Miami's offensive line is going to be a major strength this season from top to bottom. Even at depth as well, Miami's offensive line is really good. So Carson Beck is going to have more time to throw the football than he did at Georgia last season. And he's also going to have a good friend known as the running game, because Miami has very capable backfield to help out in creation of play action, bringing the defensive backs in, allowing more for one-on-one situations. So he won't have Cam Moore stats, but he will have a very good season, and he will push himself to be a first-round pick in the NFL draft if it continues.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you there, man. So we get from Albert McKinney, the Notre Dame talking heads do not sound too confident about the quarterback situation going into week 1. The Notre Dame fans think they're going to come in here and win a 17-10 football game. Listen, it's Notre Dame's job to believe that they're going to win the game, and that's fine. I'm not making any predictions just yet, even though I do think Miami's going to win the game. We'll say predictions for later on. But just to speak on that comment real quick. Listen, I get what people's idea of Miami and their home field is, right? We'll start with the fact that they went undefeated at home last year, right? Mm-hmm. 1, 2. I know that the Bethune-Cookmans of the world and the Virginias of the world and whatever don't draw big crowds in Miami. That's not breaking news. Even when they were winning titles at Miami, that was the case. Those games were very often not sold out. You can walk up to the box office day of the game, get a ticket, and go in. That's never not been the case at Miami. It's an issue now because over the last 20 years, just because they haven't been winning, right? So we know that to be the case. But let me tell you what they do well is the big events and the big teams. Your Notre Dame, right? Your FSUs, your Floridas, those big teams. Nighttime at Hard Rock, that place is going to be wild. First game of the season, the entire day, tailgating, drinking, the whole deal. When I tell you that starting quarterback at Notre Dame, whoever it is, whether it's Kenny Minchie, whether it's CJ Carr, I'm telling you that they will not be able to hear game one. I'm telling you right now, I will be there, and I will send you videos of it. I promise you that they will have a hard time with that crowd noise. I'm telling you right now. And now it may not be the same for Bethune-Cookman. It may not be the same for later on in the season. But I'm telling you, game one versus Notre Dame, that quarterback is going to have his hands full. So
yeah, he will.
17-10, maybe. I don't think it'll be that low scoring. I definitely don't think that. I'm thinking more something like 20, like 24, 21, 27, 24 type of game. I definitely think 17-10 is a little bit, too low scoring for my taste. I think the over-under on it is, I think it's like 53.5, if I'm not mistaken. So I'd definitely go a little bit higher than that, but I definitely don't think it's going to be a 45-42 type of game.
Yeah, I agree with you, Q. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. I think 24-17 is like a 7-point differential. It's going to be a good call. It's going to be physical as well. It might even be a little sloppy as well. First game of the season. We'll see how. Miami came out guns blazing last season. Let's be honest. Hopefully, it's the same repetition. But I do think Miami's Notre Dame's defense is better than Florida's, so it's gonna be very challenging for Miami early on as well. But like I said, I do think Miami could come out with a victory, and I think it's a good way to start the season and get it rolling.
100%. Back it up, bitch. Podcast. What's up, brother? Appreciate you joining us.
JB
said, "Will you going to wear your Catholic comic shirt?" No, man, no Catholic comic shirt. I'm not sure what I'm wearing yet. They're making an orange out, so I got to wear something orange. But
yeah, I'll be wearing some orange too.
Not sure.
I'll be watching it from home, but I'll be wearing orange.
Oh, for real? Yeah, I'll definitely be there for that, bro. I'm so excited for that. So excited. But man, look, the quarterback room as a whole. Obviously, we assume we know what Beck is going to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're looking at that quarterback room as a whole. We're looking at another year of Emory Williams that I think can only help, right? It's going to be his third year in this offense, right? You're looking at right behind him another year of Judd Anderson, right? After his true freshman season last year, right? Which obviously he didn't do much. You get rid of a guy like Reese Poffenbarger, right? You replace him with a guy like Luke Nickel. And I think the quarterback room as a whole, obviously, losing Cam Ward is a huge loss, but you ease that loss with Carson Beck. And I think behind them, you have to like what you have in terms of the next three guys up. And we'll see who the number two is. I have to assume that it's Emory Williams. I have to hope that, we don't get to see a whole bunch of them next season. But I think the room as a whole, I think is in a pretty good place.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I can only hope. I mean, Emory's done well in practice. And I've heard, some of the guys that have been to practice say that what we saw in the Pop-Tart Bowl isn't who Emory is. I was a big proponent of Emory Williams last season based upon the flashes I saw his true freshman year when he came in against Clemson and Florida State. I was very disappointed and a little freaked out. The fact that it seemed like he didn't develop, from that first season when he played in the Pop-Tart Bowl. But we'll see what happens, man. I do think that we have a good quarterback room. I do like Judd Anderson. I do like also Luke Nickel. I think Luke Nickel is going to be a stud when he's ready to take over the helm as well. I like what's coming behind Luke Nickel and Darion Coleman as well. People are going to say that he is the future of the quarterback room for the Miami Hurricanes. So we'll see. But the bottom line, though, I think Miami's in a good position at quarterback with depth as well. And if something is happening to Carson Beck, we don't want anything to happen to Carson Beck because then it will be tough, but I am confident that the quarterback room could win you a couple games this year if something was to happen to Carson.
Yeah, I think I'm with everybody when I say, you hope to never have to find out, what Emory looks like in year three. I think, listen, man, this is a guy who his freshman season, beat Clemson, was probably a few plays away from beating Florida State and Tallahassee. Yeah. Obviously, this is, an undefeated Florida State team, and so, to me, I think you have to imagine that now in year three, in his development, year three in the same system, right? I think, from everything I've heard, at least, right, he's a guy who looks good, right? He's a guy who's lost a little weight, who's a little bit more mobile maybe than he used to be, but adjustment in his throwing motion, a guy who's looked accurate, right? Who's looked to challenge people downfield. So again, man, you have to like what it is that you're hearing from him. But also, obviously, the most important player on the entire team. Obviously, we know who that is, and you're hoping for a healthy season from him. And listen, man, I think if you get a healthy season from him, then again, I think you have to like where you're going to be at come end of the season if everything goes. If these position groups that we're going to talk about go the way the way we assume they're going to go based on talent.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So new sub, go blue. Jen J, wishing you a great season. See you in the playoff. Hey, from your words to God's ears, Jen J. Well, if we get to meet in the playoffs, listen, I will gladly welcome it. Good luck with Mr. Bryce Underwood, the $10 million man. From what I'm hearing, sounds like he's a real deal. I don't know if they've officially named him the starter, but all points are all signs are pointing to him starting the season for your Blues. So we'll see how the season goes, man. That Big Ten is looking
pretty
tough.
good. Yeah,
I think those top three teams I think are pretty well set up. If you're looking at Oregon, Ohio State, and Penn State's looking really good. I think after that it's kind of wide open, but we'll see, man. A lot of people are really excited about what Bryce Underwood is going to be. And obviously they're paying him like he's going to start, like he's going to be really good. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, good luck. Appreciate the subscription, and good luck to your team. Let's move on to running back, man. A position that I don't know if you heard Donald talking about it early in the week, but the Doak Walker watch list came out with 104 people on the list, and not one Kane. Not one Kane. Really, really interesting development there. I was a little bit surprised for sure, especially when you consider what Jordan Lyle was coming out of high school, what Mark Fletcher was coming out of high school, what Marty Brown was as a freshman last year in FCS, winning the Jerry Rice Award as a top freshman in FCS. Really, really interesting to not see any Canes land on that Doak Walker award list, or award watch list, I should say.
Yeah. You had the two guys from Louisville, and you had two guys from Syracuse over Miami, over Mark Fletcher and Jordan Lyle and Marty Brown. Unbelievable the fact that they were able to do that. I think it's because again, it's kind of ridiculous because you have a top 10 line, and like you said on my show, David Martinez had the easiest 1,000 yards of his career last season. Basically through half the season he was a backup to Mark Fletcher. I mean, the fact that there's no Kane on there is a huge sign of disrespect to the University of Miami, especially since just because they don't get a lot of tread on the tires because they have a nice running back rotation. They're not even being seen. I mean, yeah, I get it. Isaac Brown is a beast. Let's be honest with you. We felt his wrath when we played for Louisville, but you're not going to include Marty Brown. You're not going to include Jordan Lyle. You're not going to include Mark Fletcher, who's heading into year 3 as a Miami Hurricane. Listen, man. Listen, man. Take those receipts. The same way that they're putting Cade Klubnik and Haynes King over Carson Beck. Just take those receipts, do it on the field, and smash those teams. That's the best way to shut all those people up. Just win football games, all right, and do it on the football field, and that's it. That's pretty much what you need to do. It's a shame that you have a top 5 line, I will argue, and not one Kane running back. Not even one Kane running back is listed, as a top 100. It's unbelievable.
It's super interesting to me, again, for a lot of reasons, right? You look at, first of all, what's in the room, right? And maybe to their own detriment. Maybe, I think there's enough talent there where I think maybe, they don't believe that there's going to be one running back get enough of the carries, get enough of the yards in order to really even be in the running for that award. But maybe, I don't know. But when you look at the room as a whole, a talented room, right? And like you said, and like I talk about, talent, depth, experience, right? Mm-hmm. The talent is there, the depth is there, right? And the experience is there, especially at the top with a guy like Jordan Lyle or a guy like Mark Fletcher, Jordan Lyle. You have Marty Brown, right, coming in as a sophomore, from the SES level. Then you add to that, the back end of the room with your younger guys, right? A guy like Bruce Wheatley-Humphrey, who hasn't really played a whole bunch, but people are saying good things about him in camp. Gerard Pringle, right? So the room as a whole, man, hit all 3 marks for me: talent, depth, experience. And then you go back to last year and you look at what it is they did under Shannon Dawson and in this offense. You're looking at them Yards per rush, number 5 in the country.
Yep.
Right, 5.6 yards a carry. They averaged 32.9 rushes a game, which was 100th in the country, but they were 5th in yards per rush, right? So I would say, like we talked about with Damian Martinez, right, a very effortless, almost very efficient 1,000-yard season for him last year, right? He got going really kind of towards the middle of the season and really kind of hit his stride, but ended up running for over 1,000 yards, right? So, 100th in the country in rushing attempts per game, but 5th in the country in yards per rush.
Adding context to that, if you don't mind, keep in mind, Miami's defense was so bad last season that Cam Ward had to throw a lot.
100.
So let's also be perfectly frank. Like, he had to throw a lot in those games, so that's one of the main reasons why we were so bad. And that's not, I wouldn't say bad, but we were like at 100th in carries, but yeah, we're able to be like a top 10 team in terms of running the football. But you're scared because when our running backs did touch the football, they were very effective. But Cam Ward threw a lot last season because we were playing from behind quite a bit.
Yep. Rushing attempts per game, 100, but rushing yards per game, 27th at 185.9 yards per game. So again, man, you're looking at what this system does, right? You're looking at, coaching, talent, and who you're handing this ball off to, man. And again, I think you hate to continue to go back to Carson Beck, right? But it's definitely tailor-made for him to come in and thrive, right? He's a guy that doesn't have to carry the team on his shoulders. He's a guy who's going to have time and who's going to be able to not only be protected by a really good offensive line, but hand the ball off to a great stable of running backs and let them kind of do their thing. And now you mix in the play action and all that deal. But again, man, you have to like what you have at the running back position. You lose a guy like Damian Martinez, obviously not ideal, right? He gets drafted by Seattle. And then you replace him with, a guy like Marty Brown, which, again, he's probably going to figure less prominently into the offense than Damian Martinez did. But the guys who will get who will be first and second in carries, in I think in all of our estimations, Mark Fletcher and Jordan Lyle are ready to take that step. And then you bring him in as your third running back. And again, I don't know. I know they didn't land anybody on the Doak Walker, watch list. But listen, I don't know that there's 6-7 running back rooms in the country that are better than Miami's at this point.
No, I totally agree with you. I mean, and I do think that Miami will. I mean, like I've told you in past podcasts, whether on your show or mine, I do think Miami's offense is Miami's defense is going to force more turnovers this year. So Miami be in a better position to use their running backs the way they're meant to be used. So I do think you will see those numbers change quite a bit this year. And I do think that the offense will be much more balanced than it was last year because, like it was mentioned, Cam Ward had to throw a lot as well. But like I said, I totally agree with you. Mark Cristobal loves running backs, and we know that's a position he heavily recruits, and he tries to recruit at least 2 per cycle as well. So Miami is really good, is really set at running back for this entire season.
Yeah, you got to
Gerard Perkins will be a beast, by the way. I saw him at the spring game. That guy's going to be a monster. So watch out for that young man.
He can run, man. He's got wheels.
He's powerful.
He runs bigger than his size. And he's got speed. He's got track speed. He's got track speed. I mean, and you watch the competition he played against, not light competition. And, he tore it up against really good competition. The dude was smoking people down the field. I mean, smoking people, running between the tackles, breaking long runs against really good competition. So you have to like what you have there in him. And again, as a probably number 5 running back at this point, right? Assuming, that he's behind Chris Wheatley-Humphrey at this point, but you have to love that room. And then not only that, again, going back to coaching, you really, really have to like what you have in a guy like Matt Merritt, right? A guy who was brought in with not a lot of fanfare, right? But a guy who's recruited the position really well, and by all accounts is coaching the position really well, and a guy who is loved by his players. If you listen to people talk about him, man, everybody raves about him. The community raves about the relationship that he's built and everything. So again, a room that I think is deep, it's talented, and really has the potential to, at the end of the year, be better than what they were in 24.
Absolutely, totally agree with you. And Matt Merritt is a good guy. I mean, if you look at the behind the scenes with the Canes and so on, a lot of the shorts not the shorts, but the specials they do on YouTube, Merritt, that guy could coach and he can motivate as well, which is unbelievable.
Yeah, man. The offense, man, I'm really loving just what you don't have on defense is that continuity in the offensive coaching staff, right? You bring everybody back. You have the continuity with Merritt at the running back position, with Coach Wodio at the tight end position, obviously Coach Mirabal, Shannon Dawson with the quarterback. So I think you have to love it. And by all accounts, the continuity matters so much more on offense, right? Because of the timing and everything, the nature of the offensive line needing that continuity, the quarterback needing, the timing to be good with his players and his receivers and everything. And they're really lucky to have that, in this year in 25. It's the first time that they've had, that type of continuity from season to season, bringing back everybody on the offensive coaching staff.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, man. So next position, man, we're going to look at wide receiver, and obviously a position that, aside from quarterback, for obvious reasons, has been talked about and speculated about the most, right? And for good reason. You lose your 6 top pass catchers, and I think there's definitely a little bit of cause for concern, right? I mean, you look at who you lost. A guy like Xavier Restrepo, who goes without saying. Obviously, the guy was an all-time great at Miami in terms of numbers he put up. You look at a guy like Jacoby George. Obviously, played well when he wasn't committing stupid penalties. He was a guy who was really good. Oh my God, it's so frustrating watching that guy.
It was,
but he was good. He was a good player. Sam Brown was decent. You look at obviously Elijah Arroyo being taken in the second round by Seattle, so big loss there at tight end. But it's what I've said and what I continue to say about this room is it's a room to me that's really intriguing. And when you look at what you're replacing, right? And I don't know if it's controversial. I don't know that it's, I wouldn't call it controversial. I just think it's something that my eyes tell me. When you look at what you're replacing production clearly, right? But I think you're replacing it with talent, right? And I think you're replacing it with guys, with every person who's going to be replaced on this offense. I think probably with the exception of Elijah Arroyo possibly. But I think at receiver, every person that you're going to replace somebody with, you're replacing them with a guy who's more talented. Now, does that mean automatically that they're going to be better and more productive? No, right? But in my opinion, what I believe to be the case is the guys being replaced. And listen, and I know what X was, but you're replacing production, not a super talented guy, because whatever his numbers said at Miami, we got to remember that his numbers are what they were because he stayed longer than just about everybody. Your previous big-time receivers at Miami, guys like Santana Moss, guys like Andre Johnson, guys like, Reggie Wayne, and so on and so forth. Like, these are guys who didn't stay in college as long as X did, right? So I understand what his numbers say, but also there's context needed to that. I understand. I like X. Don't get me wrong. The guy was great for Miami. A great dude, easy to root for, the whole nine. But when you're looking at who's going to replace X, every person that is in the running to start at slot is a more talented guy than X, right? When you're looking at a guy like Ray, a guy like Malachi Tony, so on and so forth, those are guys that are more talented based on coming out of high school, based on the way they were recruited. They're more talented than X, right? And even a guy like Tony Johnson, I don't think who's super far off from a guy like X, right? Tony Johnson coming from Cincinnati, obviously not X, but at the same time, not somebody who I don't think, can't give you the same type of kind of similar productivity as Restrepo. That's just my personal opinion. So I'm looking at this receiver group as a whole, and I think they're deep, and I think they're talented. What they're missing is that top end experience, right? CJ Daniels has that experience. Tony Johnson has that experience. A guy like Keelan Marion has that experience coming from BYU. But I think what they brought in is a clear sign of what they think of the room, right? They brought in guys who 1 year of eligibility because they know what they have coming behind them. And the sophomores and the freshmen are guys that are going to be really good, right? You look at your freshmen, you have to be excited. Josh Moore, Dalen Upshaw, Malachi Tony, and then the sophomores, right? Nye Carr and so on and so forth. So I think the talent is there. With the underclassmen, you just didn't have the experience, and that's why you brought in the 3 guys that you did. But as a room, I think you have to be really excited about what this room can be. I just don't see worry in that room. I see talent, and I think given what Shannon Dawson has done with this offense and what he's done, putting these guys in position to be open and put up numbers, I think that it's only a matter of time till this offense is humming in 25 with Carson Beck.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And a guy that isn't getting mentioned a lot is JoJo Trader. I think JoJo Trader is going to have a great year. I know ESPN has said he's a guy to watch out for. I think JoJo's going to have a phenomenal year this year as a sophomore, coming out of where was it with Shaman Ramadan alongside with he was on this side of Jeremiah Smith. So that's another thing too. So yeah, the thing is that they don't have experience. You're absolutely correct. Last year was very difficult to get experience. The Canes had a 4-man rotation at wide receiver. They didn't play a lot of the young guys because, as we talked about a couple minutes ago, is because they're playing from behind quite a bit. So that ability to get experience really didn't happen. But we did see flashes. We saw flashes from JoJo Trader in the Pop-Tart Bowl, who actually had a touchdown in that game. So I am excited about these young guys. I think they're going to catch Notre Dame by surprise. The guys that do go out there, because although they're inexperienced, they do have talent, and they're also battle tested, because a lot of these kids played in very, very, very competitive atmospheres in high school against very elite competition, guys that Notre Dame recruited themselves. So we're going to see a lot from these wide receivers. It's going to be some growing pains a little bit early on, but all I've heard from these young guys are nothing but positives. Malachi Toney has been killing it in practice, been killing it in the scrimmages. I saw him in a spring game. He was all over the field. They called his name quite a bit, when I was there. Even had a touchdown as well. Heard a lot of good things about Upshaw. Josh Moore has been killing it as well with one-handed catches. The Canes released a short early on when they first started practice after, they were right before spring. They had a one-handed catch. Well, they brought in with Keelan Marion experience as special teams. I think Miami special teams, as far as kick returns and punt returns, is going to be a lot better because of Keelan Marion, but he's also making plays. I heard him practice on the field. CJ Daniels is going to be a good leader, I think, for that locker room as well. So I am very excited about this room. Again, with the lack of experience, they do make up with a lot of talent and very, very, very good football IQ and very good ball skills as well. I think it's going to be like you're breaking in, your car. Okay, it's a little fast, but then once you kind of figure out how to get the handle of it, and so on, it's like drinking a glass of water driving your vehicle, and that's going to be for these kids. Once these kids figure out the speed of the game, they'll be just fine. Marty Brown said when he was interviewed on, I think it was ACC Day or Canes Media Day, that he had to get used to the speed, of the defense, because at the FCS level, they're not that fast comparable to the guys in the Power 4, but he got used to the speed. Right, he got used to speed and he adjusted. And I think you get to see a lot of with the young guys. I'm excited about this wide receiver room. Notre Dame is a very good test for them, but I'm very excited about this wide receiver room. I'm very excited about the talent that we required as well from this wide receiver room. So I'm excited to see what they bring to the table this season.
Yeah, 100%, man. Again, we go back to talent, depth, experience. I think what they're missing is the E part of that. Or they're missing the experience. I think as a whole, I think you got some guys up at the top, with like we mentioned, Keelan Marion, with CJ Daniels, with Tony Johnson, who are experienced, obviously aren't all-American types by any stretch of the imagination, but I think they bring some much-needed talent, to the room, and I think they're going to be a big help. And I would imagine these guys to start the season off against Notre Dame are going to get a lot of run, but I think as the season starts to go along, I think the young guys kind of start to separate themselves because of the talent in the room. And I think you have to like what you have, again, going back to the OC. And then with Kevin Beard, who I think, has become one of the better wide receiver coaches in the country, a guy who's recruiting the position really well, right? And a guy who's developing these dudes. Listen, there wasn't a Miami wide receiver that got drafted last year, right? None of the guys from this offense at receiver got drafted, right? And you can chalk that up to whatever it is you think, was the case. But those numbers don't lie, right? And I say that to say Cam Ward wasn't throwing to Jeremiah Smith and Ryan Williams at Alabama. Like, that's not who he was throwing to, right? So you look at this offense, and there's proof of concept, and we continue to go back to that. We continue to talk about what it is that Dawson has done since he's gotten to Miami, right? Let's not forget that in 22, right, when Josh Gaddis was still there, before Shannon Dawson was there, they were 80-50. I'm sorry to bring back that memories and cause you some heartburn right there. But
Donald says Josh Gaddis triggers me.
Yeah, listen, man. That guy, you're not the only one. That guy triggers the majority of the fan base. But listen, in 22, they were 85th in total offense.
Yeah, they were bad.
85th, right? So I know we talk about offense not necessarily being this quick fix from one year to the next, but 85th in 22, and in 23, I got it pulled up here, they were 25th. Right, so we really have to start looking at a guy like Shannon Dawson, and his ability to coach, and really start to consider him in that realm, right? Frank Boros Award, type candidate. Listen, that doesn't happen by mistake. That doesn't happen by mistake. I mean, that's a huge leap, right? And with a guy like Tyler Van Dyke, let's not forget.
Yeah.
And I'm not here to bash Tyler Van Dyke or anything, but listen, Tyler Van Dyke had some big time deficiencies, not the least of which was up here. I remember watching an interview with him, and it was, I can't remember her name now, but it was somebody from ESPN. And I remember being so taken back by it, because he literally said, he goes, I don't want to have to guess. I don't want to have to audible. I don't want to have to scramble. I want to be told exactly what to do so I can go out there and do it. And I remember watching that interview and going, did you really just say that? Like, you really said that in like a public forum, and taken back by that and surprised. And it just tells you what kind of person you're dealing with mentally. Like, the guy was nervous. He was nervous to ever have to audible. He was nervous to ever have to take off of the ball. Like, he wasn't capable mentally. He wasn't capable of doing what you need a really good quarterback to do, right? But there again, even with him at the quarterback position, they jumped 60 spots, right? And so, again, now you fast forward to what he did with these receivers, and again, he didn't have a receiver drafted, right? And so he put up the number one offense in the country with receivers who didn't get drafted. Elijah Arroyo got drafted at tight end, right? But again, you really, really have to. That's why I'm looking at this wide receiver room, and I'm going, listen, if he did that with those guys, who again were experienced guys, and I get that, right? There's no substitute for experience, and I totally understand. I totally get that. That's not lost on me. But I think between the system, between the coaching, you add those things together, and you add the talent you have in that room, along with the work ethic that seems to exist in the room, is what you're hearing. I think all that equals to a position room that I think come end of this season, I think we're going to look back at and say, even with them not necessarily putting up the same numbers, because I think they're going to be a more balanced offense, I think we're going to look back at the end, at the end of 25, we're going to look back at the season and say, the wide receiver room is definitely better off than it was in 20.
Yeah. Going back to Shannon Dawson, I look back at when people were skeptical of him because of the fact that supposedly Dana Holgorsen called all the plays, which there's some truth to that over Houston. And what his first season was with TVD. If you look at introspectively speaking, if TVD doesn't have the season he has as far as throwing interception goes, Miami's a 9-10 win team. All right. If you look at the way it looks. Okay. Number one. Number two, I also listened to what other people were saying about Shannon Dawson. These are things I didn't hear about Josh Gaddis, who actually won the award. People like Hal Mummy, who's the founder of the Air Raid offense, loves Shannon Dawson. Dana Holgorsen loves Shannon Dawson. The late Mike Leach loves Shannon Dawson as well. Now these are coaches. Geno Smith, Tavon Austin, as well. They all say, I think it was Geno Smith said on Twitter, Miami, you got a good one, right, as well. They all like Shannon Dawson. So Shannon Dawson comes from a very good coaching tree, a very offensively rich coaching tree. But not only that, his coaching peers respect him, and the players that played under him respect him as well. So that says a lot about Shannon Dawson. And I do think if Miami has another great year and Carson Beck is just a top 5 pick in the draft, Shannon Dawson will be a head coach next year somewhere. There's rumors about him at Rice last season, but I do think that if it happens again, that Miami has a good season, Beck has a good season, guess what? Shannon Dawson will be a head coach somewhere next season. So,
yeah, I mean, listen, I wouldn't be shocked, right, to see that. I mean, I hope that obviously the season goes the way we want it to go, and that he comes back next season. Right, I think you have to like the trajectory, of the program and the offense under him, and I get, it's another topic for another pod, right? But I think I don't know that next year's starter is necessarily on the team at this point, but I think again, if that's the case and they go portaling for another QB, you have to, as a transfer QB, you have to look at the Miami offense with him as the person leading it and say, listen, look at what he's done the past 2 years, right? He had Cam Ward drafted number 1 overall. He had Carson Beck drafted, we're fill in the blank. That's an offense that I can go and thrive in based on the system and the talent around me, right? And so, to me, I look at the quarterback room. I don't know with 100% certainty that next year's starter is on the team, but I think if they go out into the portal and they're looking for their starting quarterback, I don't know that they're going to have much trouble landing one if this season goes, the way we think it can go, and Carson Beck gets drafted, in the first round. I think you have to look at the resume as a quarterback in the portal and say, hey, you know what? That's an offense that I can go to, be surrounded by talent, and really up my draft stock and get drafted high.
Yeah, no, I totally occurred. I totally agree with you. Listen, this is a good offense. It's a very quarterback friendly offense, and it's an offense, and that not only will you excel as a quarterback, but you're also given autonomy as well. Cam Ward said he had the ability to audible. Carson Beck said the same thing. So that if you're coming to a Miami Hurricane-led offense under Shannon Dawson, you will be coached well. You'll have a very quarterback-friendly scheme with a good running game as well, with a good offensive line, but you'll also have some freedom to call your own plays if need be. So that's the one thing that's attractive. No, will be attractive if Miami does go portal shopping as well. I really hope they don't. To be frank with you, because I do think if you continue like this, it may hurt recruiting in the long run. But I can't understand. I do understand what you mean, because we're still not totally sure on Emory Williams, not even Judd Anderson either, and Luke is still really young. He's a true freshman this year. He's probably gonna get a red shirt. I think he's gonna be redshirted, so we'll see. But the bottom line is, this is a very good offense, and Shannon Dawson is a very good OC and a very proven OC right now.
And I hear what you're saying about maybe driving some people away, man. Listen, if at this point you have to live with whoever wants to walk out the door, right? You have to really look at the quarterback position as a whole. Of the 12 quarterbacks drafted in the NFL draft this past April, you know how many of them were transfer quarterbacks? 11 of them. Only one of them wasn't a transfer quarterback. That was Jalen Milroe. Every other quarterback drafted in this year's draft was a transfer at some point in their career.
Yeah.
So again, man, I think you have to look at that, and you have to live with the fact that, listen, if somebody wants to hit the road because of a transfer coming in, hey man, safe travels, good luck wherever you go. Like, that's the way I'm looking at that, because you can't be afraid of competition. And I get to a certain extent, right? If that were to be the case, a guy like Emory, right, going into his fourth year, in the program, you bring a guy that obviously you're pegging to be the starter. Like, I can see him leading, right? But everybody else, you look at, maybe a Judd Anderson hits the road, right? Because now you have whatever transfer portal guy you bring in, and then you have Luke Nickel behind him, and then Darion Coleman behind him, and so you have to like the way the room stacks up, right? And if you're Judd Anderson and Emory Williams, you look at that and go, well, listen, I'm never going to play here, and I'm out. So I would totally understand that. If I were them, I would get it, and I'd probably hit the road too. But that kind of thing, whether it's them or anybody behind them, can't scare you. You have to do what's best for the team, and if the best thing for the team is bringing a guy into the portal, then so be it. And whoever doesn't like it, hey, hit the road, safe travels. Thank you for what you've done for University of Miami.
Good points.
That's how it'll go, in my opinion.
Good points.
Right? So we'll see, man. We'll see how that goes. But again, man, I think with what they're putting on tape and what they're putting on paper in terms of stats and what they're putting into the draft, I think you have to like your position if you're the program, and you have to really like your ability to be able to land a big name, if that ends up being the case. So we'll see, man. We'll see how that goes, but cross that bridge when we get to it, I guess, right?
Absolutely.
The next position, man, we'll look at is tight end, and I think a position where now current landscape of the position, man, I think you have to really love where you're at, right? You lose a guy like Elijah Arroyo, you lose Riley Williams in the transfer portal, which obviously they didn't want to lose, right? He lands at Oregon State. By all accounts, I think he was homesick or something like that, right? So good luck to him. A guy that I know for a fact they didn't want to lose. A guy, super talented kid, big kid, with a lot of ability, but it is what it is. And then you lose your basically your third string tight end, who was Cam McCormick, who played better than I actually thought he would play. When I heard he landed at Miami, I was like, why? Why are they giving this guy a ninth year of literally a ninth year of college football?
Yeah.
So, but he ended up being way better than I think most of us thought he was going to be. Right, scored the first touchdown of the year at Florida, ended up being really good as an extra blocker on the end of the line, and came up big. Was obviously good in the locker room and the whole deal. Being an adult, and now he's actually with the Patriots now as like a I can't remember the exact role, but Alonzo Highsmith brought him up there to join that staff. So, but I think you fast forward to 25 and another room that kind of similar to the wide receiver room, right? Deep, talented, just missing experience.
Yeah, you have Elijah Lofton. I think he's gonna have a good year, as well as a Swiss Army knife. You could line him up a tight end. Inline, you could be an inline blocker, so you can flex them out wide. You can have him at running back as well. I think this is going to be a very good room. I think Elijah Lofton is really going to be the guy. It's going to be a good security blanket for Carson Beck as well. Then you have Luka Gilbert as well, big guy. People thought he was going to play offensive line at one point in his career because of his size. I like what I'm hearing about Brock Schott. Brock Schott, his frame kind of reminds me of Jeremy Shockey. The footwork from what I've heard, the speed, the hands, the height, kind of reminds me of Jeremy Shockey. I think that he's going to be very good as well. Not a lot of experience, but I think he's going to be very good as well. Forgot the name of Matt Bauman, right? So the name of the big kid from Tulane.
Alex Bowman, who they brought.
Alex Bowman, thank you. Thank you, Alex Bowman. I've heard a lot of good things, big red zone target. So, again, Carson Beck is going to have a lot of toys to play with in this offense as far as receiver goes. And at the tight end room is, I think, a very strong in a strong position for Miami. Despite the lack of experience, the talent is definitely there. Elijah Lofton is a guy that's sneaky speed, right? Doesn't look like the fastest guy in the world, but he can run away from people. He's got really good hands. He's shifty as well. He can block as well. So I like the position this room is in. I really do. They've recruited well. Coach Woody has recruited tight end very well, and they're coached very well as well. Both everybody can block and they can catch the football as well and run away from people.
Yeah, I think you start with the presumed starter, which is Elijah Lofton. I will say I don't want a guy with that body type to be doing a lot of blocking against big time edge guys or anything like that.
Of course.
Or anything. Of course. Height wise, he's not the tallest dude. I think on a good day he's maybe 6'1", and I think we may be being generous if we call him.
Yeah,
6'1".
He's listed at 6'2", but I've heard that he's more like 6'1".
6'1", yeah, right. But the body type is different. Obviously, a guy who's built more like a big running back. Maybe a fullback or whatever. You're probably going to play a little H-back, right? Depending on how many tight ends you have on the field. Maybe play him at, a fullback type position. Maybe, you bring in a guy like Luka Gilbert, so on and so forth. But listen, you never like to lose a guy like Elijah Arroyo. I think it's great for the program that he gets taken in the second round. Obviously, a guy who was, by all accounts, maybe the third best, tight end in the country last year. When you talk about the two guys taking the first round, Tyler Warren and Colson Loveland, Tyler Warren by the Colts, Colson Loveland by the Bears. But I think a lot of people feel like, he was right there with those guys. He was taken in the second round, but, a guy who's a threat downfield, a guy who, can run. This dude can move. He's big. He can move. So obviously very good reasons why he was taken in the second round. And a lot of people think that I've heard people say he'll be the best tight end taken, in this past draft, right? So you hate to lose a guy like that. But then when you look at the room that you have, right, I think the phrase that comes to me is body types. When you're looking at the tight end room, there's a lot of different body types, right? A lot of different abilities. When you look at a guy like Alex Bowman, who now comes in from Tulane, scored a bunch of touchdowns at Tulane. Big time red zone threat, right? Not a ton of receptions, but a guy who anywhere near the line of scrimmage was a guy who was a threat to score a touchdown. Then you add Elijah Lofton, who's definitely a mismatch in terms of the body type and the way he's able to run. And then you add to that the two freshmen who are probably going to see the field this year based on everything people are saying. Luka Gilbert is a huge dude. I think they're saying on the low end he's 6'7", possibly 6'8".
He's tall.
Not a lumbering dude by any stretch. He's a 6'7" at least guy, who can get out and move and can make some plays down the field. And then a guy like Brock Schott, who, like you mentioned, I've heard Jeremy Shockey. I've heard people say Brock Bowers, because of the way he can run. The kid can move. He's a big kid. He can really get downfield. He's going to be a mismatch for linebackers and safeties and everything like that. So I think you don't like having to replace Elijah Arroyo, but if you're looking at the room, at the body types, at the way Coach Woodie has recruited the position and the way he's coaching it, I don't necessarily think that they're better off than they were in 24, but I think as a unit, you replace Cam McCormick with a guy like Alex Bowman, who I think is a more talented player, who I think has more ability than Cam McCormick does, and then you add to that the two young guys. So again, highly recruited kids that they went to the Midwest to get. Let's not forget that, right? So Coach Woodio's reach, is becoming, is becoming longer and longer. Where he's getting these guys from. I think overall, I like the way this room is going to look throughout the season, in a room that to me I would call better in 25 than in 24, even with Elijah Arroyo getting drafted in the second round.
Yeah, because collectively speaking, they're more talented. I mean, they are, from recruiting to the transfer portal acquisitions. They're more talented. So, yeah, I agree with you. Elijah Royal is a beast. As a matter of fact, Elijah Royal at one point in the season was being lined up in the boundary as a wide receiver. So that's how athletic and quick that guy was, all right, as well. And I do think if it wasn't for his injury history, he might have been a first-round pick, to be frank with you, in the draft this season. So, I mean, losing Elijah stung. I mean, I will say that, to say the least. But as a collective, Miami's tight end room is much more talented than it was last season.
Yeah, you had to know that was coming, right? I mean, you had to know. Listen, given his injury history, right, and the whole deal, we knew it was like there was no way he was going to miss another year in college when he had lost 2 years due to injury, right? And so, you're happy for the kid because he got drafted. He got drafted high, obviously, for a tight end. But again, I think it lessens the blow when you added what you added to that room. You have to like what you have in terms of the body types, the depth, and the talent of that room. I think they're going to be in good shape. And before I go on, James Holcomb, shut your mouth with that Go Gators.
Yeah. That's why I smiled when I saw that comment. I'm like, one snuck in.
If I find a way to kick you out of this chat, I'm going to do it.
Does he work with you?
Yeah. We used to work together. That's one of my best friends right there, man. We chill at the cigar shop a lot together. So shout out to him. He's a huge Gators fan, huge Falcons fan also. We go back and forth about the old Gators, but yeah, that's my brother right there, man. So shout out to him. And see, there he is. He's laughing because he knows he's talking shit and annoys me. Yeah, man, glad to see you on here, brother. Glad you can join, man. But yeah, the room, man. Like I said, I think we're gonna look back at the end of the year and look back at this room and say it's in a better position than really it was at the end of this past season. So. And then we move on to O-line, man. I think the room that I think when you consider how good this or how talented this offense is when you're looking at the roster, I think it begins with the O-line, man. I think your starting five, you really have to like where you're at. From tackle to tackle, man. I think they're loaded. When you talk about body types, look no further than the O-line. These are guys that are huge. Every one of these dudes is big, except for the center, James Brockermeyer, obviously not a huge guy. But when you're looking at your left tackle, your left guard, your right tackle, these are all guys who are I think over 6'5". All of them are in that 130-pound range. I mean, I think Carson Beck is going to be really well protected by this group this year.
Yeah, they're big, they're powerful, and they're athletic. I think Coach Crispo told, I think he said to Joe Rose that CC Mauinoa, our right tackle, projected first-round pick, has 20% body fat only. Okay, that's a big dude and very, very, very powerfully strong. So that right side with him, Inez Cooper, our center as well. Then you have a battle at the left guard position. I've been hearing everything from Matthew McCoy. Now it seems like Pancake Honcho is getting everybody to run for their money as well at left guard. Pancake Honcho CC was 1, Honcho was 2. Okay, so that's an embarrassment of riches, and you got Markel Bell as well. Really came along last season at left tackle, and is projected to be drafted as well. So this is an NFL caliber offensive line that loves to run block and can get nasty at their run block, but really loves to pass protect as well, and is very good at it, and is very smart. A couple times when some teams were starting to figure out how to get through the line just a little bit, they were able to change the protection, and that's it. It was no more. So this is a very good group. This is the strength of the group on the offense, and this is the group that's going to make sure that Carson Beck has a clean jersey. All right. Miami gets a Doe Campbell Award winner, right, as well, or at least a nominee as well, and Carson Beck. And Carson Beck is going to have very good stats this year, and the wide receivers will have time to get open as well. So I'm very excited about this group. This is the best group. Again, if you have your trenches set, whether it's on the defensive side of the ball or the offensive side of the ball, the game just becomes a bit easier for you.
Yeah, man, listen, the loss of a guy like Jalen Rivers in most years would have been, something that would have caused concern in the Miami chat rooms and on the podcast and the whole deal. You look at this year, and that's not the case, right? I think, in my opinion, when you're looking at this offensive line and who you're replacing, right, Jalen Rivers, and you're replacing Zach Carpenter. The Zach Carpenter loss, right, a guy who didn't get drafted after having Matt Lee drafted the year before, right? I think you even though Zach Carpenter was good, right, he wasn't bad last year. He obviously, again, a guy who didn't get drafted, you replace him with a guy like James Brockermeyer, a guy with a long, lineage, he comes from NFL talent, right? His dad played, for a long time in the league. His brother plays college football, the whole deal, right? So he comes from a football family, a guy who you could, probably see getting drafted, right? Based on physical talent, based on pedigree and intelligence and the whole deal. But then you look at what you lose in Jalen Rivers, and then you replace him with a guy in Markel Bell, who on a bad day is 6'8", who on a bad day is about 340 pounds, right? So listen, how can you not be excited for that, right? Jalen Rivers, a guy who was good, right? And a guy who, right, played left tackle, but I think to most people's eyes, he was a guard, right? I think he played left tackle because he was the best offensive lineman they had, not named CeCe Maminoa, who obviously entrenched at right tackle, who wasn't going to get moved. But he played there, probably out of position. But now you're looking at a guy in Markel Bell who was a true tackle. A guy who, again, a dancing bear, as they call him. A guy who really, to me, and I'm not saying he's Trent Williams, but if you look at the way he's shaped, his size, his measurables, a guy who compares really favorably to a guy like Trent Williams, and a guy who, if they hit on this kid and he does what they expect him to do, you're looking at Markel Bell at left tackle. If you happen to start, let's say, Matthew McCoy at left guard, a guy who's, by all accounts, is 6'6", about 330, 340 pounds, and then CeCe at right guard, who is 6'5", about 335, Inez Cooper, who is, 6'5", about 340 pounds also. When you're looking at what you have in front of Carson Beck, not only is he going to help Carson Beck, not only is he going to help the running game, but now you're going to see the benefit that gave those receivers who, again, were not super uber talented guys who, because they had the time that they had, it gave them that little half, second extra to get open so Cam Ward could hit them. And I think it's the same benefit that, again, not to go backwards and talk about the receivers again, but I think that they're going to help every position group, including the receivers, in that whatever, they can't do, initially in terms of getting open, that O-line is really going to help them, again, that extra step that they may need to maybe break and get open. I mean, again, just one more benefit that this O-line is going to have, man. Again, I think, they're talented, they're experienced. I think the two deep, I think, is also, a group that is talented. When you have a guy like Samson Okunlola, former 5-star recruit, behind him you have a dude like Juan Minaya, who everybody's been talking about, has really made strides and looks really good. Talk about a guy like Tommy Kinsler, a dude who was committed to Florida before he flipped to Miami. Humongous dude. Nickname is Bruno, right? Because he is just a humongous human being. And so when you look at what you have at the starting O-line, and when you look at what you have behind them, a group that you have to be super excited about, and that I think is really going to give this offense a chance to really, maybe not necessarily be the offense from 2024, but I think still is going to be a really good offense, probably dominated a little bit more by the run than they were last year. But again, I think an offense that is going to dominate up front and dominate time of possession because of the way they're going to be able to run.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. The depth in this offensive line is phenomenal, right? It's phenomenal. And next season, a lot of these guys are going to the NFL. The recruiting class that's coming in of monsters is going to be phenomenal as well. They're going to reload at offensive line. So, like I said, the best position group on this team is the O-line, the most consistent group as well, and also coaching as well. Coach Mirabal is one of the best in the country, not the best in the country, from my perspective. So I'm excited. I'm excited to see how they fare against Notre Dame's defensive line on August 31st. You'll get to see it firsthand, as you will be at the Rock. I'll be watching it on television from my home. So we'll see, man. I'm excited, man. I'm excited to play bully ball or or shoot or throw it all over the field, whatever it is they want to do. I'm excited. I think this team is going to be it's going to be a very surprising football team because I think they're going to be better than what people expect, and I think they're going to be a more complete offense because the defense won't put them in so many holes this season. That's just a projection on my part.
Yeah, no, 100%, man. Listen, like we talked about with my buddy Keith, that he was saying, that Carson Beck won't put up the same numbers. And again, we go back to that, right? I think as a program and as a staff, I don't think that's what you're looking for, right? And I think the offensive line affords you that, right? I think you're looking at what this line will be able to do. I think they'll be in the running for that Joe Moore Award, right? I think they'll be considered. I don't know if they'll win it necessarily, but I think they'll definitely be in the running for it. And if you're in that conversation, you have to like where you're at as an offense. You have to like, the way you're going to be able to run the ball. You have to like the way you're going to be able to pass protect. You're going to have to like, as a receiver, the time you're going to have to maybe get open, and you're going to need that time, against a defensive backfield, for example, like Notre Dame, right? They've got great DBs. I think Moore, I think is their starting corner. I think he's a preseason All-American, right? Considered one of the best, corners in the country. And so again, man, I think it's a tough defense that you're gonna open up against, and definitely some tough cornerbacks. But again, I think we'll see, right? I think we'll see if Notre Dame's corners, right, can match up against the receivers, right, to see how deep they are, right? If you go 4 wide, we'll see how they line up against them.
Yeah.
Desmond Hodge did over 2,200 yards in 2 yards. I think he meant 2 seasons. That has nothing to do with him staying longer. It's not be replaced. 700-yard game. We'll see him replaced anybody on this roster. Listen, I wouldn't push back on that. But again, I think when you're looking at his place, in the offense, all right, and I think in his numbers all time, Desmond, not in one season, but I think his numbers were helped by the fact that he stayed longer really than anybody. And again, a guy who didn't get drafted. So I'm not knocking X. Like I know what he meant to the team, and I know how good he was, right? A guy who was a technician, a guy who got open professionally, right? Because of, the work he put in, but a guy who wasn't, the measurables weren't blowing you away. The speed wasn't blowing you away, right? A guy who benefited from being, in an offense, aside from what he did work-wise and everything to turn himself into a good receiver. I think he was a guy who was helped, by the offense. He was a guy who was helped by the time he had, I think, to get open. So I'm not saying they're going to replace that. I think this year, my expectation for that receiver room is I think they're going to have, probably, 5 guys who are anywhere from like, 600 yards to about 200 yards. I think, there's going to be a lot of, a lot of yards scattered, amongst a lot of people, and I think, again, your leading receiver, I'd venture to guess, to me, I would say they, 600 to 700 yards. If I had to guess, I honestly don't think your leading receiver will have any more than that, but I think it's going to be evenly distributed among a lot of people just based on, there's not an established number one on the team at this point. CJ Daniels, Josiah Trader, but I don't think your leading receiver is going to be a guy who's over 1,000 yards.
Yeah, I think that you'll see a much more heavier rotation this year than you did last season. I think that's something that the coaching staff is really wanting to push, to not have just a 4-man rotation, maybe have up to like maybe 6, even up to 8. I think I heard this morning as well. So we'll see. We'll see. I think also what Desmond was trying to infer as well is that X played 4 seasons, but he also lost 1 year due to injury. I think his sophomore year is when he had the foot injury, which is Coach Cristobal's first year. I think that's where he was referring to also the yards as well that he was able to accumulate more or less. I think Moss played all 4, didn't he? And so did Wayne. Did they play all 4 years?
Man, I have to look. I think Moss may have. I don't know that Reggie Wayne did.
Okay. All right.
Don't hold me to that. I'd have to look that up. But I want to say Santana Moss left as a senior. I don't think Reggie Wayne was a senior when he left.
Okay. All right.
Again, don't hold me to that.
Either way, I mean, I agree with you. Moss and Wayne were more talented than Restrepo.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
I mean, you can't argue that.
Yeah. That's what I go back to, man. X didn't win with a guy he wasn't a super talented guy. Again, he was a lightly recruited 3-star who turned himself, worked hard and turned himself into a really good receiver at Miami.
Yeah, he did. Absolutely.
Put up the numbers. One of the, the greats in terms of, his contribution is the numbers and the whole deal. But, again, there was a reason why he didn't get drafted, right? There was a reason why, he went out, ran what he ran, because at his size, he needed to be fast, and he wasn't fast, right? I mean, a guy who's under 6 feet, right? A guy who, again, won with technique and angles and everything like that, setting up corners, but didn't win with just pure physical talent. So again, is he going to make the Titans team? Yeah, it looks like he's going to. But again, there was a reason why he didn't get drafted. It was not only was it a deep year for receivers, but a guy whose skill set didn't necessarily translate to the NFL. Jacoby George also didn't get drafted, right? And so, Sam Brown didn't get drafted. Right. So, again, a guy in Sam Brown who was, a low 4.5 guy, maybe a high 4.4 guy, who had more measurables, right, than X, didn't get drafted, right? And so, I'm not saying that he was a bad player. Obviously, he was a really good player for Miami, and definitely will always be remembered as such. But I've said whoever you replace X with, you're replacing with a guy who's more talented, in my personal opinion. Now, does that mean that he's going to go out and have, 7, 100-yard games in the season? It doesn't at all mean that. Not at all. But I think given the offense, given the time that he'll have because of this offensive line and because of the running game and how effective they're going to be with play action and everything, I think it will give these young guys a chance to be better in time than really anybody that preceded them at their position.
I agree. I don't remember the game completely, but Keith brought up a point about the SEC championship game. Wasn't Beck running for his life in that game? Like, if I recall, the SEC championship game.
He got injured, right? I mean, they were in the backfield.
Yeah, no, that's when he got hurt. But was he like running for his life throughout the whole game? Like the line gave him no time.
Pressured. Yeah, he was definitely heavily pressured. And listen, I don't know, man. I'd push back a little bit on he didn't completely thrive in the big games. I mean, again, there was a reason why he only lost 3 games in the SEC. Played 8 of the top 30 defenses in the country last year. And so again, he was I think overall he played well against the good teams. Obviously, again, only having lost 3 SEC games, 2 of them being Alabama. And a guy who was. You could count on, to not be, turnover prone, and a guy who, again, wasn't being protected by a great O-line and wasn't throwing to great receivers and, still had overall, a good year, right? And so, you fast forward and look at what it is he has to go against, at Miami. He's not going to play against the same type of defenses. He's not going to, he's not going to, have to put the team on his shoulders like he tried to do last year. And I think that's where some of the mistakes came in is, he was having to force some things because of the lack of talent on the outside. And so, and he'll tell you that, right? But again, and a guy who I think has all the ability in the world, a guy I think who's more mobile than I think people give him credit for. He's not Lamar Jackson or anything, but I think a guy who is mobile. I think a guy who, he's a big kid. All right. He's not slight, build by any stretch of the imagination. And a guy I think who's going to sit in there even under pressure and deliver the ball downfield, right? This guy has all the traits in the world, to be right up there with, if not the best quarterback in the ACC. I think, one of them, right? I think a lot is being made of Cade Klubnik. I don't know that I buy the hype necessarily. I would take Carson Beck personally at this point. I think he scrambles better than Beck, but I don't think he's a better quarterback than Carson Beck. I think you talk about a guy who didn't play his best football against the best teams. Look at what it is he did, last year in the losses. He was terrible in the losses, and he basically, he beat up on the cupcakes essentially, right? But those 3 losses that they had were all his worst games, right? And so, again, I don't think that you can necessarily say that about a guy like Carson Beck. So, got some comments here in the chat. What did I see? I think he'll do. He said, I do think he'll be a good fit with you, though. I think he will too. X will have a solid NFL career as a slot receiver. Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't necessarily, I don't push back on that. I mean, that's up for debate, honestly. I mean, what are we calling a solid NFL career? He's a guy who I think I've seen him in the preseason games. I think he started to play some special teams. It's something he never really did at Miami. And I think when you're an undrafted free agent, I think that's how you make a team at receiver. corner, linebacker, everything like that. You have to play special teams. We'll see how he excels in that area. And hopefully, man, I hope he has a really long, not even solid. I hope he has a great NFL career.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, I don't know, man. We'll see. Guys like before him, Braxton Berrios, guys like, who else was taken before him in terms of, slot receiver. We'll see, man. Those guys stuck around, long term. They started off on special teams. And, Berrios made a Pro Bowl, right, as a returner and everything like that. I don't know how, he was never really great, on the offensive side of the ball. He was like a wide receiver 4 with the Jets. And so, listen, he stuck around because he was a good special teams player. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I think, I wish him the best. So I hope he has a really long, successful NFL career. He deserves it. Good dude, easy to root for, man. So I'm definitely wishing the best for him. Keith said, you're absolutely right about forcing stuff. Georgia's wide receiver court was lacking. No Latin McConkey or Rod Roberts. Yeah, man, 100%. Obviously, he was not throwing to those first round guys last year for sure. That was a huge hit. And, as an offense, they didn't adjust to it, man. Mike Bobo didn't adjust well to it. And Carson Beck, obviously, the lack of any real talent on the outside hurt. You need some talent outside.
Yeah, definitely.
Kane Idaho said Welker and Amendola. Yeah, I mean, again, Welker ended up being really good though. Welker. I mean, if X has the type of career that Welker had, I mean, you look at the numbers. I remember looking at Wes Welker's numbers not that long ago and being like impressed. I was shocked. I totally forgot how the numbers that Welker put up. I mean, he put up really good numbers. I think he probably has a better chance of being a guy more like Danny Amendola, if I'm being honest. But we'll see, man. Listen, if he even has Danny Amendola's career, Amendola's a guy who, won Super Bowls and obviously, had a long NFL career, man. So, if he sticks around that long, I don't think he'll ever be as good as Welker, if I'm being honest. I hope he is. But I think Amendola's career, I think, is attainable, right? I wouldn't be too terribly shocked, even though I think Amendola was a guy who was faster, quicker. But listen, if you have a career like Amendola, if you're X, man, I think that's something to be proud of.
Yeah. Wes Welker had a great career, and he's another reason why South Florida, Miami Dolphin fans hate Nick Saban. He's responsible for that trade to New England. Get rid of him.
Imagine you keep that guy, man. Look at the career he went and had, right? Even though
exactly
that stretch of quarterbacks that the Dolphins had, during the same tenure as, obviously it's Tom Brady. Those guys obviously weren't Tom Brady. But it definitely would have helped them to have had a guy like Wes Welker and what he turned into. So, again, I don't think X will ever be Wes Welker, but I don't think Amendola is unattainable. I think an Amendola type career, I think based on measurables, based on ability, I think it's very attainable. So, man, if he has that type of career, man, that'd be absolutely outstanding for him. And so, like I said, man, I hope that for him and even more, man. Hopefully he goes on to have a great career. He was highly pressured. Keith said, how will he match up with Notre Dame's defense? I think you're talking about Carson Beck, man. And I think just to go back to that real quick, listen, again, it goes back to the offensive line. Everything I've read up to this point, I think the Miami offensive line outweighs the Notre Dame defensive line by something like 30 or 40 pounds, kind of on average. So, we'll see how that goes. I think the receivers obviously are going up against, some of the better corners in the country. I think that's going to be tough. So they're going to need that time to get open. But I think everything is going to be predicated on the line of scrimmage, man. And also they can't be scared to challenge downfield, right? And I don't think Carson Beck is that type. I think he will challenge downfield. He's a guy who layers. He's good at layering the ball, right? He can throw to all 3 levels, but also a guy who is definitely not too good to check it down, right? I think he will check it down. To your running backs and your tight ends and everything. And I think that's going to be important, man, to not force the ball into places and turn the ball over and give away momentum. So, again, man, I just think with that line and that running game, man, I like Miami's chances. I think he matches up. I think he's going to match up well. And I think they're going to give him every opportunity to do well in that game and get the win.
Who do you think starts for Notre Dame, or like Flo suggested they do a 2 quarterback system?
Before I answer that, anybody wish the Kings started with a cupcake or happy with
Oh, sorry about that.
a huge home opener? I love it. I would have preferred like game 2. if I'm being honest, bro. Like I wish it would have been, like not necessarily like a cupcake. Maybe like a conference, opponent, and then kind of go into Notre Dame. But listen, man, you got to be excited about it. They've got Sunday night all to themselves. I think the nation's going to be tuning in. Obviously, man, I think the atmosphere is going to be great, and I think you got to be excited, man. Listen, if you want this program to go where people think it can go, under Mario and the way he's recruiting and the way they're developing here, very recently. I think these are games, man, you have to embrace, right? And these are games that if you look at all the other conferences, or the big 2, I should say, right? SEC and Big Ten, these are games that this is a weekly occurrence in the SEC and the Big Ten, right? I think you want the exposure, you want the notoriety, right? You want the night all to yourself, and they've got that, right? If they go out there and win this game, I think things start to turn, even though the recruiting class, I think, is good. I think it could go a step further with some of these guys who they're actively trying to flip from other programs. And I think the outlook is great, man. I think the outlook is great for the rest of the season if they go out and beat a team like Notre Dame. So, yeah, man, I think realistically, I would imagine most people will tell you, man, you know what? I'd like a game or 2 for Carson Beck to kind of get lathered up and get comfortable. But, man, listen, you have to embrace it. I think you have to love it, man. You open up against a huge team like Notre Dame, who was in the title game last year. You got to love it. You got to embrace it. And you just got to go out and win that game.
Yep. Totally agree.
Yeah. So, we'll see what the night brings, man. I think the fan base is energized. I think they're excited. I think the game, I'm telling you, I think that crowd is going to be wild. I wasn't there in 2017, but I know I was watching that game, and I know a ton of people who went to it. Were you there? Were you there at that game?
No, I had a mini party at my house. I'm at my apartment at the time.
Yeah. So I know so many people that went to that game. I know I was watching on TV, and everybody, is kind of agrees that probably the loudest they've ever heard Hard Rock.
Yeah.
And again, listen, man, the way that thing is built with the canopies and everything, it holds that noise in.
Yeah.
So on a loud night, like that night was, people like Kirk Herbstreit was like, man, this is the loudest I've ever heard this place. For Kirk Herbstreit to say that, that's big, right? And so, I think the crowd's going to be, is going to be in rare form. Again, 7:30 kick. They'll have all day to have, tailgated and partied and maybe drink a little bit. Who knows? But man, when kickoff comes to that game, I think that stadium is going to be wild. I think it's going to be rocking. And I think going back to your question, right? The starter.
Yes.
Listen, they've thrown a combined, I think, total between the two guys, if I'm not mistaken, I think 4 passes, if I'm not mistaken. And I think Kenny Menchie has all of them, right? I think Kenny Menchie has attempted, it's either 3 or 4 passes. CJ Carr has not attempted anything. Obviously, he sat behind Riley Leonard last year as a freshman. So, who I would prefer to start, I probably prefer CJ Carr because he doesn't run like Kenny Menchie does. And traditionally, like, how that goes. Obviously, this is a different team, but for some reason, running quarterbacks, tend to give the Miami defense some fits. And so, we'll see. We'll see. Everybody, the prevailing thought is Kenny Menchie starts because of his ability to run the ball. But in terms of, them throwing the ball, listen, man, first time starting any game, and it's on the road, Sunday Night Football against the Canes. I like the Canes, the chances of winning this game, man, against a guy who's starting, for the first time ever, and he's on the road in a night game. You know what I mean? So I definitely take Carson Beck in that one. Carson Beck obviously has played at the biggest, and the loudest atmospheres in the country, playing in the SEC. So the atmosphere is going to be, nothing new for him. He's played in Athens. He's played he's played at Ole Miss, and he's played at Tennessee, and he's played at, in Alabama. He's played at all these places that, were hostile environments, and he's fared well. And so, again, you have to like your chances, right? Notre Dame is basically a Big Ten team. This is a huge matchup for the Canes to start out at home. Big hype. Yeah, man. Yeah, they're a Midwest, very, very Big Ten looking team. Obviously, they've recruited well. Marcus Freeman has recruited his ass off since he's been there. He's been really good. I think he's been better than I thought he was going to be. I didn't hold out, really big hopes for him replacing, a guy like Brian Kelly, but he's proven me wrong, man. He's been really good. He's recruited really, really well. They've developed players. And listen, man, they're both teams. I think you're going to have their hands full. I think I think now and we'll get to defense, in another pod, but I think what you're hearing, from camp with the new DC, you got to like what they're, the way they've restocked the DB room and the talent, that they're bringing in, and the new scheme and everything. And I think Notre Dame's going to have their hands full too, man. Like we talked about, I don't think it's a high scoring game. I'm calling it, again, I think the over under, I think it's 53.5. I'm going under. And I'd say something, again, something like, 27, 24, maybe somewhere kind of along, that line right there. So, we'll see. I hope it's obviously by a lot more. But that's what I'm going with. I'm going with the under in that one. I'm saying somewhere like a 3 or 4 point win for Miami.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think it's gonna be a low scoring game, and I think it'll be like Miami by 7. I think Miami could beat Notre Dame. Brand new quarterback as well. Kenny Minchie, CJ Carr, whoever it might be. I think that the atmosphere as well. You have an experienced quarterback with Carson Beck out there. I think Miami could pull this one out.
Yeah, man. Again, my money would be on them, man, for all the reasons we talked about. Not to bash Notre Dame or anything, man. I just think when you talk about, and obviously their O-line got a couple injuries and everything, but you got a guy like Jeremiah Love, who by all accounts is the best running back in the country. Dude, I saw they put a table of him like in practice the other day, and the kid's footwork looked unbelievable. Like he was going like the skeleton drill and the whole deal. Like, dude, the footwork is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like kid's the real deal. So, and their backup running back, whose name I don't remember right now, obviously, really highly recruited kid. Obviously was played well last year. So, again, man, they're going to surround them with a good O-line, good running game. Some capable receivers outside. Faison is really good. The kid Fields that they brought in from Virginia. You're going to have some talent. You're going to have to contend with. So Miami's defense is going to have their hands full without a doubt. But I think again, I like Miami's chances given a first-time starter on the road at night. Big time game, hostile environment. I like Miami's chances, man.
Yeah, so do I. Absolutely.
So we'll see how it plays out, but I think everybody's ready, to kick this thing off, man. We actually got week 0 football in 3 days, man. Thursday night we kick this thing off for real. With I think it's Iowa State, Kansas State. I think is one of the big games that night, if I'm not mistaken. So again, a good I think a good Big 12 game right there to to kick things off. There's a few games that night, and man, it just goes from there, man. So I think the hype continues to build. I think everybody's ready to get this thing kicked off, and we'll see where everything goes, man.
Absolutely, can't wait though. August 31st, can't wait. I'm excited.
Yeah, man. Everybody's looking forward to it for sure, man. So this is part 1 of a series I'm going to do with my boy Will. We're going to hit the defense hopefully next week. We'll figure out a date and time for that one, but we'll go over the defense next week, and and go from there, man. But tell everybody where they can find you, big man.
All right, guys, I'm 305 Sports Now. That is the name of my channel over on YouTube. You can follow me on 305. You can subscribe, like, and share 305 Sports Now. I cover mostly Miami Hurricanes. That's where the audience is at. But if you like little Miami Dolphins, I cover them too. I cover the Miami Heat as well. Been doing a lot of Florida Panthers coverage as well, and some local MMA as well. So please subscribe 305 Sports Now. You can follow me on X as well at William Padron at 305 Sports Now as well.
Yes, sir.
And I'm sorry. I will be on with Adrian Rainey, okay, the Ed Rainey podcast on Wednesday. We'll be recording. We'll be doing some Canes talk as well. I'll be on his platform as well.
Man, I got to get with AD to do some stuff, man. I know he's definitely a big supporter, man, a big fan of what he does and everything, man. So big shout out to my boy AD on the Rainy Day Pod, man, putting out some good content, some good info with it, man. So check him out for sure. To everybody participating in the chat, my boy Idaho Kane. My boy Fitz, we'll definitely talk offline right there for sure. This is not announcing the starter spot for scrimmage. I expect that. I'm not surprised to hear that, but we'll see. Farmageddon, that shit cracks me up. He's talking Iowa State, Kansas State. Is that what we're talking about? Kane, Idaho. I think that's what he means by Farmageddon. Which would make sense right out there in the plains in Kansas and in Iowa. So I think that's what he's talking about. But either way, man, that should be a decent game, man. I like was it Avery Jones was the starting quarterback for Kansas State, man. That kid's legit.
Yeah.
And Iowa State
he is.
a pretty good team. So, man, like we said, like and subscribe to the shows, man. You can find me on YouTube at the I Hate Football Podcast. Same thing on Instagram, I Hate Football Podcast. On X/Twitter at Hate Football Pod. There it is. Yup. Yeah, I figured that's what you were talking about. Yeah, man. That clash of the Titans on the plains right there is like Kansas State and Iowa State. But like I said, Hate Football Pod on X. I'll be collaborating some more with my boy Will. We'll get together next week and talk about the defense. You can find us on each other's pods. If you guys are looking for some more content, look at my buddy Bobby Finstock on the FTSN and FTSN Extra channels on YouTube, man, putting out really good content stuff, man. Some great people over there. If you're able to find them, subscribe. They definitely appreciate it. We'd appreciate it. And, man, I think that's all we got for you guys tonight, man. So appreciate everybody in the chat tuning in and participating, man. We really appreciate it. Like we talked about, like and subscribe, man. We would really, really appreciate that also to be able to grow this thing and keep it going. I think that's all we got for you guys, man. So until next week, you guys have a great night. See you soon.